So tonight starts a new MCU TV show, Cloak and Dagger. Now, Cloak and Dagger are characters I would excuse you for not having heard of, even though I know them. I didn't hear about them until they showed up in Maximum Carnage years ago. And, well, that swimsuit issue. Either way, teenagers are not how I picture them, but that is how they started. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Episode 1, Season 1, First Light of Cloak and Dagger. Alright, so there's a lot of question of exactly what sort of themes and symbolism Cloak and Dagger are going to pull from. They're also on a channel that I don't normally watch. I think it used to be ABC Family. It is an ABC affiliate. It's called Freeform. But Cloak and Dagger definitely interests me. It's one of those concepts that I think really, really works well. The idea of darkness and light, the idea of order and chaos, plus, not to mention, just teleportation and energy blasts. We've seen them in other genres before. We've seen them in the cartoons and TV shows before, but we've never seen them in a standalone. And their standalone comics were pretty good, even if they haven't all aged well. But alright, for those of you that don't know, what I do here is I review stories. I take them apart, put them back together, and figure out how they tick. Basically, I try to figure out how and why we tell stories. If that sounds interesting to you, click the subscribe button and join our little community. Also, don't forget to leave me a comment, especially if you disagree with something. I love talking with you guys about these things, and Cloak and Dagger is definitely going to be one of those shows that I think we could have an interesting conversation about. Now, like I said, Cloak and Dagger aren't unknown, but they're lesser known characters. So it was kind of interesting that that's what Marvel went with. But at the same time, their origins as teenage runaways from the comics definitely leads them to something that were more than capable of being used for a pretty dark and interesting story. And like I said, their own comics were pretty good. We also have some tie-ins. See, they use the light and the dark force, but they also are products of the Roxxon Corporation. You can easily remember that Roxxon's been used for a couple of different MCU properties already, most notably Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, who, by the way, Agent Carter also was using the light and dark force, although we thought at the time Doctor Strange was going to be using that more too. At the same time, it also has ties to Ghost Rider, all sorts of things. Now, if you remember, Agent Carter had Madame Mystique, who was drawing on the Dark Force. So too was Blackout, and I believe that during the Darkhold storyline, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. dealt with that again. So this isn't a new concept, it's an old one. However, I have to say the whole adding in of this whole divine pairing and the light force is what makes Cloak and Dagger different than just being another Dark Force story. The idea that these two characters are empowered by opposite ends of the spectrum, they're a yin-yang to each other, and at the same time, that they have so much in common that they're just brought together. Now, without going too spoilerific, I will say the episode pulled a lot more of the what they're doing is similar, what they're doing is related, but not bringing them together. And if anything, that makes this even a stronger parallel as we watch as these people are doing things in the same neighborhood, in the same world, in the same area in some cases, but never directly connecting. Well, occasionally connecting, and when they connect, there are fireworks because, well, their powers not only set each other off, but their mere presence. And their presence on screen is pretty powerful. The actress and actor they have playing them are doing a pretty good job of playing messed up characters in a messed up world. And again, without going into spoiler territory yet, I am curious to see how this plays out throughout the season. I'm not sure if I'll review it every week, especially since Thursdays are my movie night, and I have Incredibles 2 next week. But for now, let's throw this up there and get started with the spoilers. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. So like I said, Cloak and Dagger are two messed up individuals. They both are dealing with loss, and they're doing it in bad ways. They're not quite the drugged out runaways that they are in the comic books, but at the same time, they're not quite a normal Stepford family either. These two characters have a lot of emotional baggage, and Freeform is doing a lot to make sure that we understand that. I mean, how do you deal with the fact that your brother got shot by the cops, or the fact that you're the survivor and that your family died? I mean, those are some pretty heavy things to settle on a couple of teenagers. They weren't even teenagers when this all started. The opening sequence, they were preteens, and they went through massive trauma. She saw her father die in a car accident that was mostly his fault for talking and distracted driver. He saw his brother shot through no fault of his own, although I'm hesitant to blame the cop. An explosion and a gunshot are two very similar things, and when you have a suspect drawn and the explosion goes off, yeah, best case scenario, they shouldn't, but it's a lot less hazy than a lot of real life police shootings nowadays. But both actors pull it off well. He's trying to live the good life. He's trying his best to follow the rules, stay in the game long enough to make something of himself. And he's got a lot of problems doing it, which again comes from the fact that he's being raised with pretty messed up mentality. She's living pretty much on her own as a runaway, has a drug problem, a drinking problem, and is scamming guys. In fact, her initial introduction is her pulling a scam on a guy and using her body as a weapon. That's pretty messed up, although it'll make plenty of sense why it is that she can make knives with the light power. Alright, so overall, there's no direct supervillain in these first episodes, and like I said in the pre-spoiler section, a lot of the time we spend with these two characters not even interacting with each other, but how they are reacting to stimuli around themselves. It's not exactly a cut screen in between the two most of the time, but it might as well be. The first time they interact is as very small children, when they're both in the water when the explosion goes off that most likely is the excuse for their powers. The second time is at a high school party when she steals his wallet. And I have to say, I kinda like both interactions. Both of them feel just real enough and just strong enough to make me sit there and say, yeah, I can buy this couple. I can buy that this is Cloak and Dagger. And each part of the episode just reinforced the next. So, part of the way their power source works is that there has to be a balance between them. The light and the darkness, the light force and the dark force. And of course, I don't know exactly how they're going to do it because it's not going to be the exact same as the comics. But they need each other. Not just need each other for their powers, but they need each other to complete each other, to help each other. Not even necessarily just romantically, although they have been romantic before. Part of it is that they're just the best friends. They are the people that they can turn to. The people who understand how messed up they are. And if you really want to know how messed up they are, there's a scene where Dagger has just had sex with her boyfriend and co-thief. And she asks if he believes in God and then goes into this whole metaphysical thought process. And then stops. And he says, you do that a lot. And she goes, what? Stop talking. Like right before you get to the important part. Like, for some reason you can't connect. And I'm pretty sure the same is true for Cloak. By the way, their name are Tandy and Tyrone. Just in case I keep calling them Cloak and Dagger, even though they're not yet. And I'm not really willing to believe that they're going to go all out and have costumes anytime soon. So, Tandy has an interesting conversation with her mother and realizes that when she touches someone, she can see what they hope and dream, although she hasn't put that together yet. Tyrone has an interesting conversation with his mother because, of course, everything mirrors each other, and they get a great Black Lives Matter moment out of it. Honey, I'm not worried you're going to do something wrong and I'm going to lose you. I'm worried that even if you do nothing wrong, I could lose you. And since the police officer that shot him really was in the wrong, even if it was much less so than some stories, I still gotta say, it's an understandable fear. So both of them are dealing with parents that aren't exactly the best, even though they are trying to be. And both of them are dealing with lives that are spinning out of control. And now they've got powers, teleportation, and the ability to see into someone's wishes. And now they need someone to understand. As of the end of the first episode, Tandy was not yet able to manifest her light daggers. But she was attacked by the guy that she robbed at the beginning of the episode. Now, to be fair, he wanted to stick something inside her. She just beat him to the punch. And, well, where I have no qualms about self-defense when it comes to a would-be rapist. As far as I'm concerned, that's perfectly fine. At which point the episode's pretty much over. Tyrone's learned to teleport, at least subconsciously. She's learned to activate her weapon. And then we're on to episode 2, which luckily is on at the same time. So I guess we're up to episode 2 of season 1, Suicide Sprints. I will say, with how dark it was that the last episode ended and this one began, I do wonder, does this show need trigger warnings? Do I need to warn before I talk about this? Let me know in the comments what you think. The world's pretty much spun out of control. A murder investigation, a bunch of problems, and of course we start with the split screen thing again. It's pretty messed up, and again, it's not actually split screen. But at the end of the day, Tyrone is trying to deal with the fact that he made a simple mistake on a basketball court, and Tandy is trying to deal with the fact that she stabbed a guy, and she says it so perfectly. I don't even know what I'm hoping for. Do I hope that he lived, in which case he can ID me, or do I hope that he died? The darkness and the light playing off each other, and no one's quite sure where they're going to grind up on this roundabout trip. And to just for a second pause the whole meta-theoretical stuff about right and wrong. When you guys put text messages on a screen, could you make sure and blow it up really big? Some of us people aren't little kids anymore. Some of us are old men who can't read that well on TV screens. Just saying. I'm also not quite sure if I like the fact that both of them have other love interests. I like it in the fact that they're not just going, oh, these two are meant to be together. But on the other hand, I get the feeling neither one's going to last that long. And I hope that we don't lose Tyrone's family too quickly. The light and the dark need to mix. But I also hope they do a nice mix between the immediate story and the long-range story. Cloak and Dagger is already quite an interesting concept, and one that I can't wait to see more of. Now, next week I'll be watching Incredibles 2, so I won't see this until then, but I'll catch it on Friday and do a review of it then. For now, this episode just goes darker and darker, and again, the play of the fact that they're not together, but their storylines are so parallel each other, is such a great motif for a series. Episode 2 continues as we watch as Tandy is digging herself in deeper and deeper into trouble, because she's trying her best to get out of trouble that she caused for other ways. Meanwhile, we watch as Tyrone, who's made just honest mistakes and just trying to deal with things and do things the right way, is getting lumped on more and more with other problems. Almost like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Which I'm pretty sure most teenagers can relate to. In fact, if you're a teenager watching this and you don't relate to the fact that the whole world's out to get you, you're one of those rich snobs that Tandy's stealing from, probably. Although I bet that not many of you are grifters like her, or super hardworking athletes who are trying to get out of something like him. At the end of the day, we're all just normal people going about our normal problems. But we watch the extraordinary for a reason. Sometimes it's easier to watch someone like this go through problems and overcome them than it is to deal with your own problems. Sometimes it's even easier to watch because you can sit there and say, see, that's in the make-believe land, in the far, far away. Even if it's in New Orleans, Louisiana. Even if it's dealing with trouble that's all too common. It's not really animated. It's not really a comic book. What it really is a hard-pressed real show with real drama. And you know what? I'm glad that they are stepping up and making this. But I also hope that as the season goes on, it's not one big tease of will they, won't they. Although instead of kiss, it's going to be will they or won't they start working together and find out the true trouble in their life comes from a corporation. A corporation that one of their parents works for and one of their parents used to work for. The corporation that's responsible for their power. And of course, I'm talking about taking on the Roxxon Corporation. Of course, I would also be upset if they just made this a superhero show where they fought the villains of Roxxon, because there are some seriously messed up themes. I want to say twisted, but maybe realistic's the right word. what happens when we break at a very young age, and how we deal with trauma. And the fact that some people try to take on everything and put all the burdens on themselves, and some people just run away. And that sometimes the darkest that we get to is right before we see the light. And sometimes the light is just what we use to hide from the dark that is within ourselves. I really loved the first two episodes of Cloak and Dagger. I'm curious what you guys thought. Do you agree with me that the motif of them being parallel but not together, the fact that they ended together at the absolute last second, the fact that it looks like next week we're going to see them find out more about how their powers work, is an interesting way to go? And do you want to see this have villains in it, or just the villains that haunt the human spirit? And of course, when you leave those comments letting me know, give me a like and a share, because I'm trying to build this up. And of course, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button, because Cloak and Dagger is just the beginning, as the MCU is taking over into a whole new way. I want to build a whole community where we can talk about how and why we tell stories, and I think, like Westworld and some of the others I do, Cloak and Dagger is going to be one of those dark, edgy things that is going to let me really talk about why we tell stories. And in this case, I get the feeling the one is to deal with the traumas that are in our own soul, our own darkness. I hope you have a good night, and thank you for walking with me through the heart